what are some strategies that females in particular, if there are any kind of differences you want to elaborate on, that would be great. What are some strategies in particular that females or anyone can take to diet, but do it in the physically the healthiest way possible, but B, ensure that they're not maybe affecting their mindset, relationship with themselves in the process? Are there any strategies, tips that you can recommend?
Well, from a nutrition side, I'm always going to want to see protein in somebody's diet, right? I don't think I need to teach people protein at this point. I spend more time telling them to eat less than I do more within this industry. But I still want to make sure that their meals are balanced. I think it's very easy for us to go, maybe reduce your carbs. I'll cut it all out. Like, it depends on what type of personality you are. So start with just really not excluding things. I think I used to be that type of person. Like, if you want to exclude it, okay, cool, that's what you want to do. But I definitely want to make sure that there's balance, especially from a female's perspective, for their hormones and just to support their body. Because subliminally over time, that food can just maybe get bigger and bigger and bigger the long time you stay in it. So not exclude any food groups in particular. Look at your portion sizes. What's the lowest hanging fruit? Do you think you can adapt something? It's not taking something away completely, but could you buy 3 coffees out instead of 5 this week that's a latte that probably contains more calories than you think it does? Or maybe consider changing a meal out because you eat out 5 times a week and it's actually not that much of a big deal to you. It's not something you need to manage particularly. So increasing movement, obviously, from an output perspective, steps is a thing.
Yep.
It's a large part of your metabolism. So we are at desks a lot, and COVID did great for a lot of us, but then we just started working more. So people aren't getting away from their desks. They're just working through lunch, maybe going across the roads to get something to eat, or going to their kitchen, which is 2 steps away. So generally increasing your NEAT is always going to be, even though it's non-nutrition related, I kind of assess what their energy balance looks like in all parts. So
yeah, you can't just look at half of that equation.
Yeah. So looking at the portion sizes, looking at where they think most of their calories are coming through, and I get them to sort of evaluate, like, okay, so what's going to be less painful? What do you think's the lowest hanging fruit here? Well, I do maybe have a couple of gin and tonics on a weekend. Cool. What do you want to do there? Do you want to have 1? Do you want to have 2? Do you want to look somewhere else for it? So it's kind of just, again, I guess you would need somebody's context to be more specific, but yeah.
So explain to me, if that's okay, what is the benefit of what you've just done there, which is ask them in terms of where do you want to look, how many you want to reduce it to? Obviously, I understand motivational interviewing, but what is the benefit there in terms of getting the client or the person listening to decide that for themselves?
If you look at prescription from a medical perspective, the actual rate of adherence to taking medications given to you, like literally, here's this, take this 3 times a day, is shocking. We're terrible at it. So for me to say, eat 120 grams of chicken, this amount of broccoli, this amount of rice, sure, some people are going to be able to do it. But why? That's not an idea they came up with. I'm just telling them. So the retention of that, the thought process of knowing why they're doing it, the buy-in to it is going to be a lot less than it is making them think it's their idea. Or them going, oh yeah, that's a decision I made. It's ownership, right? You've got to own your decisions. They're not going to do very well if they think Didi told me to do that, or this is the plan. It might get buy-in initially, great results for a couple of weeks, but what happens in 2 years' time? And I'm not coaching them.
Yeah, I think that's the mark of a good coach, isn't it? When we care about the long term, and ultimately, if you're the individual listening, you should care about if you can keep it off or not, because it only gets harder to lose it every time, right? So how many of those swaps would you typically get someone to make in week 1? Are you just getting them to focus on just one swap or reduction or thing per week? Or how many might you get someone to kind of tackle on average?
I mean, week 1, I might not even make any changes because I want an accurate assessment of where they're at. So sometimes that takes a week or 2 just to get that. Yeah. If I start giving them ideas week 1, and then tell them to do a food diary, they might start changing things. Then I've got not really a reality of what does a 3-day intake look like for you? Well, she said maybe 40 grams of oats or 50, so I'll measure out this time. when they might have been on 100 or something.
Yeah.
I always remember fondly the first time I started tracking, or the reason why, is because all my S&C coach at the time and now boss sort of said, okay, well, how much oats do you have? I was like, I don't know how many oats I have. I don't weigh it. I don't want to live that life. So I'm definitely not like anti-tracking at all. But I went home and I weighed it, and it was 100 grams of oats. I was like, okay.
Good portion.
Like, and I could eat. Like, I was overweight as a kid, so I have an appetite. And I just had no idea. So sure, like maybe a bit of tracking is something I'm going to bring in after a week or two, just to give them that level of, right, all right, okay, maybe that's not a small amount of avocado, or that's a lot of oil or butter. Like, me thinking it's just a splash of milk is not a splash of milk anymore.
No, I love that. And what I've always really liked about your content is that we'll talk about the relationship of food, the behavioural change side of things. But I feel like some people, and the body acceptance and all of that, which obviously is key. I feel like some people have gone so far that way that tracking's the devil, and aiming for weight loss makes you a terrible person, which that I can actually relate to less than the bodybuilding approach if we're going to take extreme ends of the spectrum. Yeah. So what I love is that ability to do both. So for people that, because I'll get this, so you female clients, but I don't want to track. I'm like, okay, cool. We definitely don't need to, but at some point we might need to, and it's just a tool, and hopefully we're not going to be emotional with it. And if we want to get ahead on our finances, we probably need to have a bit of an idea of what we're spending and what's coming in. It's just a tool, but ultimately it's not just a tool. For a lot of women in particular, there is a lot of emotion attached to it. So how do you maybe break that down and get past that, so that if you do decide you feel like a female would benefit from tracking, even for a short period of time from an educational standpoint, how do you get them to implement that without maybe the negatives that sometimes come with it?
Well, you're right. Like, the behavior is never the problem. It's the context to it. Weighing yourself isn't a problem. Weighing food isn't a problem. Tracking food isn't a problem. The problem is what your beliefs about it are and where you take that. So you could weigh yourself every single day. It's not an issue for you. You could weigh yourself every day, and it's your entire world of emotional dependence. It ruins your entire day if that number changes a little bit. So I kind of have to see sort of like, is that a problem or is that not? And I need to ask that question of, what does weighing feel like? Like, what does it feel like to you? Does it take up space in your brain? Is it all you think about? Because it's very naive of me to think that my coaching and why I'm doing them is the only thing they should be focusing on. It's the only important part of the day. I almost want to make it as non-important to them as possible and take the stress away. Whereas that's what people come to coaching for, right? I don't want to think about this. I want to outsource it. I may need to get them to for a period of time, think about it until we get a system and a strategy in place that's more routine and takes that away. But it's difficult. What was your original? I definitely digressed off that one.
That was all really, really useful too. But if you've decided that you do want a female client to track, and they're maybe a bit like, I didn't have a good experience with it before. Yeah. Do you then just go, okay, no worries? Or is there maybe some middle ground or some strategies you use to implement that?
Sure. Well, I'll be like, hey, okay, so we're going to go on MyFitnessPal. It's going to tell you probably need to eat 1,200 calories. We're going to ignore that. I'm maybe going to give you a realistic target, and it's never just one number. You might see red on that number because maybe you'll track something and it'll go a smidge over. You're not going to worry about that. I'm probably going to give you maybe a gap of 100 to 300 calories either side. And we're going to see what that looks like. But I'm not going to tell them like, oh God, it's because I ate 2001 or I ate 1401 that this is now the end of the world. Also on the flip side, for tracking, it's sometimes a barrier to people actually eating more, especially with men. Like some of the men I'm coaching at the minute, I've given them a goal of 3,000. And I'm just thinking about one in particular. I looked the other day, it's like a sea of 29, 28, 27, 29, 28. I asked you for 3.
It's like a number to be below. Why did you not?
So that's, for me, psychology fascinating. So I dissect that with them, and that's like 3 is just a bit scary. Like, why? It's a range. So never be sort of like it's one number, because that's not how the body works anyway. So I get them to track, give them a range, just make them feel as comfortable with it as possible. I don't expect them to be accurate. Nobody's accurate. evidence shows that even food is legally allowed to be 20% inaccurate. So it's basically just throwing a dart anyway.
Yeah,
whether they like that or not is another question. But people want it to be as accurate. It's like activity trackers.